Hello friends, and welcome to a new iceberg for the channel. I've been focusing so much on creepypastas, but I haven't touched on the other pieces of internet horror that exist. So today, I fixed that lapse in coverage and bring to you the Internet Horror Iceberg Explained. Most of you know what an iceberg is, so I don't need to explain it. I'll be uploading this in parts since the entire iceberg would be around 4 hours in length or more in just one video. I'm going to be covering most topics that I can without YouTube hitting me with the demonetization sign. So bear with me if something isn't on the iceberg, as I'll try my best to work around YouTube's rules. With all that said, let's dive into Layer 1. Before we really start to delve into this iceberg, we should cover 3 topics: creepypastas, ARGs, and unfiction stories. These are an important precursor to our dive because a lot of these pieces of internet horror are covered by one or more of these labels. Let's start with creepypastas. The term more or less refers to a horror story that was created to be shared online. Think of them like internet campfire stories. Mostly this is done in the written form, but there have also been video creepypastas as well as art-based ones. Creepypastas are stories that are meant to be spread like an urban legend or myth. For some examples that don't show up later on the iceberg, we have Jeff the Killer, the Russian Sleep Experiment, Sonic.exe, and Smile Dog. These are some of the more popular stories that you've likely heard of. And most of these stories were spread through message boards with anonymous creators. Not knowing who created the story gave it that urban legend vibe. But of course, crediting the authors is way more important in the long run. ARGs are a little harder to explain, but I'll do my best. Alternate reality games, or ARGs for short, are a story and gaming medium that uses the real world to tell its story. This usually includes puzzles that players can complete or objects they can find that will actively change the storyline. These games are told through the creators and not through an AI like a video game. Instead, players have to be actively involved in order to play the game. That takes place mostly in real time. There are a lot of stories and projects that can be counted as ARGs, but none that I can specifically list here, as all the ones I like are listed on the iceberg already. ARGs can also be intermixed with creepypastas and unfiction, but are unique enough to be called their own thing. Unfiction is the final term we need to understand for this iceberg. Unfiction refers to stories that are meant to be imagined as if they are real in order to interact with them. They will be told through a series of journal entries on a website, or a Twitter account that posts updates from a strange reality, or even a video series on YouTube. The stories are meant to be taken as completely real or true. One of the earliest stories that use this method, and one that a lot of people like to point to, is the Blair Witch Project. The movie presented itself in all of its advertising as if it was a real thing, like real lost footage of what happened in this movie's plot. Now, unfiction is probably the biggest umbrella term of the 3, as just about any fictional story can take on unfiction mechanics. Though that isn't always the case. Unfiction does follow a lot of its own rules. The main thing that separates it from ARGs is the lack of a player component. An unfiction story will have secrets to uncover and a story to solve, but it doesn't require the players to do so. So these are the 3 necessary terms that we need going forward. I'll make references to them, but also note that not every piece of internet horror will fall into these 3 terms. Some are mysteries, some are just meant to be seen as they are, and some are true horror. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared was a web series that started life over a decade ago, on July 29th of 2011. The series is regarded as one of the true classics of internet horror. It would feature 6 episodes in total on YouTube before being moved to a network television station in the UK. The series was created by Becky Sloan and Joe Pelling. The first episode of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared starts with a title card that is pretty childlike with basic shapes on a blue background. This is already setting it up like it might be some children's media. That is how it is presented, as we see some of the shots of what looks like a kid's TV show. It looks like a kitchen with all the usual kitchen stuff, but it's replaced with toy replicas. There are 3 characters sitting around a table: a tall red mop creature known as Red Guy, a yellow man with blue hair, Yellow Guy, and a bird man known as Duck. These aren't their official names, but what they've come to be known as by the community. The 3 are just sitting around the table and looking bored before a notebook pops to life and starts telling them to become creative with a song. This whole scene is reminiscent of a typical Sesame Street skit. The characters have to learn to be creative, and this song is going to tell them how. The puppetry is impressive, and this song is kind of catchy. As the song progresses, though, things start to shift. There's a wrongness in some of the lyrics that the notebook is singing. This is when the whole show starts to flip on its head as more and more disturbing things start to happen on screen, like a human heart that is being covered in glitter, or a pie with human organs on the inside, or this black goo that appears a few times. It's very clear that this video is a subversion of the genre and mocking it even. The song continues with shots changing visual style, characters changing their regular puppets to humanoid ones, and death written on an orange background with skulls everywhere. The song comes to a close with the notebook saying, "Now, let's all agree to never be creative again." The notebook then falls limp and the song video ends. There's this final shot of the same black goo from before coming out of this mouse hole. This video was a huge hit on the internet. Around this time, there was an insurgency of both horror-related content and ad-friendly content. More and more people were starting to realize that they could make a living on YouTube, but you had to mind the ads, so sanitization was getting really popular. On the other end, Let's Players and general horror content was also starting to get popular. It was becoming more and more evident that the internet collective wanted to be scared, and this video was something that we all loved. It was also something that we would send our friends, telling them how disturbing it was, or not telling them anything, and wanting to see their surprise. It worked, as the video would become one of the more watched videos of that year, and currently sits at 76 million views as of the writing of the script. Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is a video that I'm sure not many of us will be forgetting. Salad Fingers is a Flash animated series created by David Firth. The first episode in his series was uploaded to Newgrounds in 2004 and was a hit almost instantly on the site. The first episode was called Spoons and was later uploaded to YouTube in 2007, where it currently sits at 41 million views. Salad Fingers is about a character of the same name, and is one of the most recognizable oddities of the old internet. He came out in 2004, which is still the early years of the internet. In fact, I remember the first time I saw the first Salad Fingers video was in 2007. Being a child, it was kind of a traumatic event, but one that shaped my interests in the dark side of the internet. The first episode of Salad Fingers isn't very long, coming in at only 1 minute and 50 seconds. It starts with Salad Fingers introducing himself. Then he explains that he likes rusty spoons, a phrase I'm sure everyone is familiar with at this point. Salad Fingers goes on a search for more rusty spoons and encounters this, child. He asks the child about his spoons and gets this scream in response. He enters and asks the kid about the spoons again, which again just leads to a scream. Salad Fingers says that he must be on his way then, but first he's going to touch his rusty tea kettle. The short ends after he does. Now, there's a lot going on here. The animation is very early internet. In fact, a lot of early Flash looked similar. There's kind of a nostalgic but creepy vibe to the style. The video itself has been described as many things, but some of the most common terms I've heard are creepy, unsettling, and bizarre. There is a creepy nature to the video, especially if you found this while doing some late night browsing. The weird looks to the characters and the voices of both the child and Salad Fingers are creepy. The entire premise of the episode doesn't even really make sense. It's just an introduction to a character, with Salad Fingers and his love of rusty spoons. While the first episode could be debated whether it was supposed to be funny or creepy, as the series would move forward, more and more visceral imagery would be introduced, such as when he accidentally or purposefully cooks a child in his oven. That happens in episode 2, which has taken on a more of a horror theme with the music and imagery. That's only the beginning really, as it gets more and more gruesome with each episode. Currently there are 13 episodes you can watch over on David Firth's YouTube channel. There's also some other abstract animation on the channel that could be worth also checking out. Salad Fingers is one of the most well-remembered pieces of early internet horror. It's one that you likely saw because a friend showed it to you while at school. Or maybe you saw it way back when on Newgrounds, when it first released. It's also likely that you haven't forgotten about it. Ben Drowned is a story that I've covered in full here on my channel already. If you want a full dive into what it is, you can find it on here. As for this iceberg, I still want to talk about it and the effects it had on me and others in the community at the time. Ben Drowned is a creepypasta ARG that started in 2010. It was created by Alex Hall and became one of the most important pieces of internet horror from the early 2010s. It was also one of the earliest ARGs that had the players fully controlling what happened in the story. Ben Drowned was also popular in the gaming creepypasta community, as it practically wrote the handbook on how to create one. A lot of the earliest gaming creepypasta tropes can be pulled back to this story, including the haunted cartridge, getting it for free from some shady old man, and the game speaking to the player. Ben Drowned's entire story is told through the game of Majora's Mask, one of the darker Zelda games, and a personal favorite of mine. The game's visuals were tweaked and modded to give the appearance of the author actually owning a haunted game cartridge. Ben Drowned is the story of a man named Jaducible. At least, that's the name that we're given. He was feeling nostalgic and decided to get more games for the N64 that he had acquired from a friend. While looking for some games at yard sales, he comes across an older gentleman selling ink blot paintings. Even if the man didn't have any games for sale, something was drawing him to his yard. He walked up to the man and asked if he had any games. The man told him to wait a moment, and then he came back with a box. In the box was a gray cartridge with duct tape on the front. Written in marker is Majora. It was the game he was secretly hoping he would get. Jaducible was given the game for free and took it home to play it. He found that there was already a safe on the game named Ben, which sounded like something the old man had said to him before he'd left his yard. The game was acting weird, and it eventually leads into the man going missing after having nightmares about the Link elegy statue. This is the highly abridged version of the first arc of the story, or more commonly known as the Haunted Cartridge arc. There are actually 3 arcs to this ARG: the Haunted Cartridge, the Moon Children, and Awakening. Each arc is vastly different in both the way the story is presented and how it is meant to be interacted with. In the first arc, it's more or less just a creepypasta that anyone can read and see what it's about. There's quite a few secrets and the true meaning of what's happening, or what we've been told. The second arc is the Moon Children, which deals with the cult that exists within a forum. This section is probably the most complicated as it requires years of content that is now gone from the internet to fully understand. This one also establishes Ben as a character. The final arc, which came out in 2020, was Awakening, and it wrapped up the story pretty nicely. I had a few complaints about the ending, but overall I thought it was an interesting ride nonetheless. The effects Ben Drowned has had on the internet is pretty easily felt. There's so much lore and world building done with just the original posts as well as the videos. The videos that coincided with everything that the authors saw were so cool to piece together back in the day. It was like watching a real haunting or creepypasta happening right before you. It's kind of hard to explain today, as now that it's been done, others have been able to replicate it easier. Regardless, this ARG was one of the best to grace the internet. Marble Hornets is a web series that helped create the legacy of the Slender Man. Slender Man is something that we won't be covering on this iceberg. Not fully anyway, so this is going to be the spot you hear about him the most. Slender Man became popular in 2009 thanks to a few posts on a thread on the Something Awful forums. In that same thread, the creator of Marble Hornets, Troy Wagner, would post to gauge interest in a Slender Man video series. He got enough interest, and a pilot video was posted the next day, with the first episode posted a day after that. The web series told the story of a man named Jay that receives tapes from a failed student film from his friend named Alex. Alex was acting weird about the tapes, and just wanted to get rid of them. The series takes us tape to tape and has the viewer discovering the story at the same time as the narrator is. A lot of the common pieces of Slender mythos would take shape here, like how Slender can interfere with camera equipment, or how he has proxies. The biggest piece of lore that was created for him from this series was the artwork. Slender the 8 Pages video game and most other Slender games had you collecting these pages with drawings of Slender or phrases related to him. This started with the Marble Hornets series. This story did so much to create the mythos of Slender Man and unfiction stories as a whole. The web series would last for 3 seasons, and each is worth watching in its entirety. If you want to know more about Slender Man or Marble Hornets, I also have a video about them on my channel. Marble Hornets also inspired a lot of other creators to create their own unfiction stories. We will be covering a few more of those later on in this iceberg. Local 58 is our first web series that falls into a new category that we haven't covered yet. It's called analog horror, and it's currently the most popular internet horror subgenre. Analog horror is considered the next evolution of creepypasta by many online. We'll see a few more of these as we go down this iceberg. Local 58 was created by Chris Straub, a cartoonist who had already created some notable internet horror pieces, the most well-known of those being Candle Cove, a very popular classic creepypasta. He would also write for the Channel Zero TV series, which adapted Candle Cove for their first season. Local 58 was first uploaded to its own website called local58.info. but now resides on the YouTube channel local58.tv. It was started in 2015 and is actually a spin-off of Candle Cove, as confirmed by Chris Straub. Not only is it one of the earliest analog horror series, but it is also part of a connected anthology with Candle Cove. Local 58 is presented as a public access TV channel located in Mason County, West Virginia. The channel was created in the 1930s and goes under the call sign of WCLV-TV. It services 3 fictional towns, those being Lasker City, Icker Falls, and Edenvale. The station is continually hijacked over a period of several decades. During these hijackings, the channel plays weird, cryptic, and surreal programming. The first video on the channel is "You are on the fastest available route," and it's probably the scariest of the videos. I'll get to it in a second, as there's actually a theorized order you should watch the videos in. This order is based on when the programming would have aired on Local 58. The first video in this chronology is Contingency. This video currently sits as the most viewed video on the channel, and it's where we'll be starting. The programming is hijacked, and it shows a nationwide government-issued message about the US surrendering to an insurmountable force. The displayed message from the President of the United States at the time claims that Americans need to act to preserve the memory of the US, clear and bright, untarnished, and uncompromised. It continues by saying that President Johnson has already acted and so has his family. The act that they are referring to is ritualistic suicide, something that they urge every American to do, not before taking out their children and pets though. Once that's done, they can assume the victory position, which is to lie on their front lawns with their feet pressed together and facing the sky. The feed has patriotic music playing and a sense of unease that it continues to distort throughout the broadcast. It never states exactly who this threat is, just that Americans need to act. It ends with a quick phrase about preserving American dignity and the 51st state is not a real place. It then cuts to a color test pattern and finally a message from Local 58 saying that the message was a hoax. This is only the beginning of the Local 58 story, as each broadcast hijacking gets more and more bizarre. Skipping ahead a few videos, we have the one I mentioned before. "You are on the fastest available route" is another hijacking that takes place in 2014. This video shows dashcam footage of someone driving along a forested path while listening to their navigation. It is clear that they are heading somewhere they didn't intend to go before they arrive at their destination, where this creature can be seen for a few frames. Then they are rushing away from the scene. There are in total 9 videos in the Local 58 saga. They're very much worth a watch, and pretty up for interpretation. The overall story is one that many theorized is based around an alien invasion, though that theory was initially presented by Nexpo. It has been echoed by other YouTubers looking into the series, including Game Theory and Wendigoon. The real story of this strange broadcast is one that only Chris Straub likely knows. As it's related to Candle Cove, I feel there's more to it than aliens. Maybe someday I'll do a full dive into the world of Local 58. Lasagna Cat is a web series that started uploading to YouTube in 2007. The first ever video was just titled Lasagna Cat and has someone acting out a Garfield strip, but with only audio. The next video was when the series would really start though. This video was titled with the date an actual Garfield comic came out. In this case, it's 08/18/1978. These actors act out the comic strip, then the comic strip is shown with a laugh track in the background, and finally, something new at the end. The ending was always a bit of a surprise. Like sometimes they would do a funny segment that references something, other times it was a music video, and sometimes it would just be a surrealist horror showcase. Lasagna Cat was created by Fatal Farm, a studio that worked on the Old Spice commercials, Jack Link's, and other absurd commercials. They also worked on a series of shorts that were featured on Adult Swim. This studio really understands surreal stuff. The 2008 shorts were mostly humorous and surreal, but there was a stark change when the series came back in 2017. The video is titled with a phone number. There's only one way to bring back the Garfield shorts. You have to call in, state your name, and give the number of sexual partners you've had. Yeah, that's it. They even had a toll-free number that you could call in for the survey. Along with that was the weird and gory footage that took place in between asking people to call. All of this would culminate in more absurdist videos about Garfield and even more references. Some dark, some overtly sexual, and others were actually funny. The thumbnails for the videos alone could give you the idea of what is happening. The final video on the channel is the one that most will never forget. It's called Sex Survey Results, and it has a strange premise. The video is 4 hours long and has John, Garfield, and Odie answering the door to a mannequin on repeat with an answer from the survey. This continues for almost the entire 4-hour video. That is, until the last 7 minutes, when the whole thing shifts. John answers the door to find another John. He gives the same answer that he gave back in the video, asking for people to call in, which leads to the door being closed on him with a different answer from the John inside the house. I don't want to fully spoil the ending here. It is something that needs to be seen, but is also a bit graphic for YouTube. John ages, there's a man in body paint representing Garfield, and a new John is born with an orange cat nearby. It's all insane and very interesting to watch. There's been a lot of talk about what it all means, but I think that's a conclusion you need to come to yourself. There's a message about John, the creator of Garfield here. One that I think if you spent the time watching this series, you'd understand more clearly. It's a surreal series that will continue to be a piece of internet horror for anyone looking for it. Dining Room, or There Is Nothing, is a short film that was uploaded to YouTube in 2006 by David Earl. This video sits at 9.6 million views as of this video's upload date. It's one of the internet's first viral horror videos. The video is only a minute long and consists of a gray girl sitting at a dinner table. Her eyes are closed, but then opens as the camera zooms out. There's fire behind her and a window with darkness beyond it. The girl says something to the camera as it pans out. The fire is seen to be outside the window. It continues zooming out until the girl face plants into the bowl in front of her. The scene stays like this for a moment, with the fire continuing outside and the girl face down. The clip begins to play in reverse and the girl gets out of her bowl and says something to the camera. There is nothing. She was speaking in reverse before. The clip continues until she once again closes her eyes. The video then ends here. The video is pretty creepy on its own, but there is a meaning behind it other than just being creepy. The director states that it's supposed to represent that there is no life after death. The girl dies, falls in her bowl, and then comes back to life to let the viewer know that there is nothing. The video is also supposed to be considered a paradox as the girl dies and repeats the phrase, but then comes back and does it all over again. A continuous cycle of death and life. Either side could be the one that she is referring to as having nothing. The symbolism aside, the video is one that goes on YouTube's darkest playlists for sure. The whole setup is unnerving and definitely something you show all your friends late at night at a sleepover. Something of an internet ghost story to share with others. The SCP Foundation is a topic I've covered in small pieces here on my channel. I've mostly talked about specific SCPs that fit with the subjects. This is my first time discussing the entirety of what the SCP Foundation is. Starting in 2007, the SCP Foundation got its start on 4chan's Xboard. The very first SCP to be created was the one that most people are familiar with. SCP-173 was the first SCP ever created and quickly became the face of the organization. 173 is a statue that can't move when in direct eye contact. However, if the eye contact was broken, it can move towards you with great speed. If it ever catches you, it'll break your neck in the blink of an eye. The SCP Foundation would become an open source collaborative writing project. One that anyone is allowed to add to as long as you meet the writing requirements. There's a level of quality that is required in order to be able to post to the SCP Wiki. Also a style that needs to be adhered to, where each story is written like a scientific report. Some other notable SCPs are 087, a stairwell with anomalous properties. This stairwell has a disturbing child's laugh that can be heard, as well as other creepy anomalies. The stairwell is also endless. One of the most popular creations is SCP-096, sometimes referred to as the Shy Guy. 096 is an emaciated tall figure with an almost human face. 096 is considered docile most of the time, except for if someone were to look at its face. This will send 096 into a rage that 100% of the time ends with 096 killing that person and no trace of them being left. It is thought that it could be eating them, since its mouth can open up to 4 times as wide as a human's. Not all SCPs are horror focused, but a lot of the earlier ones were. Now you're just as likely to find a science fiction or fantasy based SCP with all the horror originals. The SCP Foundation is a staple of the Internet Horror Collective, and one that I see living longer than most other forms of internet horror. I Feel Fantastic refers to this video of this android singing a song with the lyrics, I feel fantastic. The original video that this is referring to has been taken down, but it still lives on in a re-upload. This video is considered one of YouTube's scarier videos when it was uploaded to the platform in 2009. The part that makes it so creepy is the singing android in a very off-putting house. The house feels wrong somehow, as many of the comments have described it. Near the end of the video, there's also a shot of some random woods. This part sparked some early theory crafting that we'll get to in a minute. This video was created by a man named John Bergeron, who also created the android. They were designed for security and entertainment, but eventually were reprogrammed to be able to sing songs that he wrote. He wanted to sell music videos of this particular android, named Tara, singing. That was back in 2004, and it wouldn't be until 2009 that the video was reposted to YouTube with a strange caption. That video had 24 million views, but was taken down. The whole premise of seeing this moving mannequin singing to the camera in various poses made it a little more than unsettling. It was a perfect recipe for internet horror. This is actually one of the few videos that were considered a video creepypasta, as they would have crazy stories attached to them. There was also a prevailing theory that focused most of its attention on the latter part of the video. There was a theory that this video was posted by a serial killer. The android wore the clothes of the murdered victim, and the part at the end, where the woods are shown, is showing where the bodies are buried. Of course, this was just baseless speculation. It's an interesting theory that was spread across the internet though. It really added a level of mystery to this video. A video that was already a little creepy, but Haunted Gaming was a series of videos uploaded by the Some Ordinary Gamers YouTube channel. The series started sometime around 2012. I couldn't find an exact date as the original videos have been removed from the channel, save for a few that still remain today. This series covered all manner of gaming creepypastas. They were narrated by Mudahar, often called Muda by fans, and he would rate the stories at the end of each one. He would also include several spin-offs where he would play creepypasta-inspired games, search through creepy threads, and read non-gaming creepypastas. The series was a big staple of internet horror back in 2012. I remember eagerly waiting for each new upload and throwing them on while playing League of Legends or Star Wars The Old Republic. Haunted Gaming, along with Creepy Gaming, which we'll cover later, were some of the early horror content that got me into YouTube in the first place. Some of my favorite episodes are My Buddy Sandman, Halo Beta, Sonic 3 Hacked, and Necro Sleep. Each story is accompanied by gameplay that either directly relates to the story or something similar. The style was very easy to put on and listen to while working or playing video games. Originally, this iceberg had several unfiction stories that shared a similar theme, and rather than talk about all of them individually, I'd rather lump them together. This is the Slenderverse. Essentially, the Slenderverse is a collection of unfiction stories that all share a similar universe and seek to expand the lore of the Slender Man. Again, we're talking about the Slender Man. It's kind of hard not to when he was so prevalent in the early 2010s internet horror. You can go to websites without seeing a Slender Man reference or meme. He was the Internet Horror Collective at one point. Now, in the wake of the Marble Hornets unfiction series taking place, there were other stories being told. The most popular of these series were Everyman Hybrid, Tribe 12, Dark Harvest, and My Dark Journal. Each of these series could be a video unto itself, or clearly a section on the iceberg. But I felt it was fitting to discuss them as a whole. Marble Hornets had a huge impact on the mythos of Slenderman, and these series wanted to help in telling this story. Slenderman can be seen throughout all of these series. Sometimes he has similar powers to his original mythos, but other times he was an almost new entity. For me, I mainly watched Everyman Hybrid. I didn't get super into the other series until later. I started to watch them all a little late last year when I was working on my Slenderman video. Each series is unique, but all have a similar style to them. They all use tapes similar to Marble Hornets, and in each universe, Marble Hornets exists as a web series. The final piece that really links them all together are the cameos. The series would have characters appear in each other's videos. Sometimes the appearances were insignificant, while others were plot relevant. This is where the idea of the Slenderverse comes from. It's a shared universe with Slenderman as an ever-present force. There are quite a bit more series than the ones I listed. In fact, there's a whole wiki that catalogs them all, so it's actually not too hard to go and find them all. If you're interested, definitely watch Marble Hornets first. I feel it helps set the stage for each of these stories. 2014 was a year that would mark the creation of one of the internet's favorite game series, Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, this is a pretty simple game where you need to manage resources while keeping an eye on some killer animatronics. The game was a big hit when it released that year. Some could say the biggest thing to happen to the indie horror game scene since Amnesia. The game would go on to become one of the biggest franchises in gaming. It even got a movie this year, one that made $294 million at the box office. The game series as a whole would get 8 mainline games and 5 spin-offs. It was safe to say that this series is insanely popular. That popularity can be attributed to a few factors. One were the Let's Players. Lots of YouTubers played through the games, making both themselves and the games more popular. Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, John Wolf are just a few of the creators that are household names at this point. But what really made the game popular was the lore. You see, FNAF has a story to tell, one that has led to a lot of speculation and theories. The game doesn't tell you everything up front. A lot of the story comes through pieces you have to pick up from the game yourself. This unconventional storytelling really brought out the fan base. And at the front of this rise in the theory crafting for the game was game theory. Game theory was already a staple of the internet, but with FNAF, they would become a household name. MatPat had a theory for just about every aspect of the game, from FNAF 1 to Security Breach. Now, not all of his theories were correct, which is why they're called theories, but he got a lot of stuff right. Even more so, he helped to really get the community on board with creating theories about the game. FNAF, at its core, is a game that started with a very simple premise. You have to survive animatronics that for some reason want to kill you. The first theory about the game was that the animatronics had the souls of dead kids inside them. Kids that were killed by a man known as the Purple Guy. From there, the story really opens up with questions. Who is the phone guy? Why are you working at a place where the animatronics want to kill you? These are questions that can be answered by playing the games, reading the books, or you could watch an explanation video on YouTube. Also, the books aren't considered canon, at least most of them, but they do give insight into the world of the games. The FNAF lore has a lot of moving pieces, and it's likely that we'll never just arrive at a conclusion. FNAF has a story that will just keep evolving until there's nothing left for people to theorize about. The Mandela Catalogue is our second analog horror series that we'll be discussing on this iceberg. The series began in 2021 and was created by Alex Kister. The story takes place in the fictional town of Mandela County, Wisconsin. The Mandela Catalogue's first video, the one that establishes the series, was called Overthrown. This video is an edit of a children's Bible cartoon called The Beginner's Bible. The video has strange and disturbing edits, but the most important one is the edit of the angel Gabriel's face. At first the video is about Gabriel coming down to the shepherds, but later the same scene is played and he claims to be the savior. Already this video is setting up some themes that will be present in the series. A false prophet, knowing humanity, and knowing their fears, and the themes around doubting one's own religion. These concepts will come into play as the series goes on, especially with the alternates. Alternates are essentially beings that try and replace humans. They will turn into a human, taking over all their visual traits. They will then psychologically torture the person using the fears that they know of. This will lead them to getting mad, or metaphysical awareness disorder, which then leads them into taking their own life. Each alternate only needs to hear the person speak in order to know their fear. Once they speak back, there's a 97% chance of them getting mad. The series uses a now staple of the genre. It uses these distorted images to create a psychological terror in the viewers. These images of people that are clearly not people is one of the staples of the series. A few of them can be seen as kind of goofy, but more of them are pretty unsettling. The series already has quite a few videos to go through, with some pretty disturbing imagery. This is one of the most popular analog horror series on YouTube currently. It has led to several games that were inspired by its imagery already, with even more analog horror series taking direct inspiration. There's a wiki for anyone who is interested in checking out the series. Also, all the videos can be found on Alex Kister's YouTube channel. Worth a watch if you haven't checked it out already. Something that was insanely popular in the early 2010s was finding video game Easter eggs. There were loads of channels dedicated to just finding these strange, funny, and oftentimes disturbing little secrets in games. Something I've always loved doing is finding those Easter eggs myself. I love exploring what dark finds games might have. This inspiration for me started when I found the Fun is Infinite screen while playing Sonic Mega Collection on my GameCube. Some of the most interesting finds to me have been the Mount Chiliad Ghost from GTA 5, Winter Lodge from Fable 2, and the Ratman Dens in Portal 1 and 2. These are only some of the disturbing Easter eggs that players have found. This isn't even scratching the surface really, as there are hundreds of new Easter eggs found each year. A popular channel for this is Oddheader, who finds some of the more obscure Easter eggs with his community. Quite a few new and never before seen finds can be found on his channel. Now with that out of the way, let me give you my 5 favorite creepy Easter eggs. Number 5 is the Witch in Payday. I love Left 4 Dead, and the witch appearing in this game was just as creepy as when I'd first encountered her in the main game. Number 4, the Hell Valley Sky Trees from Super Mario Galaxy 2. This one is really just a classic. Number 3, Animal Crossing New Horizons Ghost Wallpaper. This one is creepy, but also really cool. Number 2, Winter Lodge from Fable 2. This one is personal to me because I found it myself while playing late into the night. Number 1 is inside Mia's Mind Palace in Psychonauts. This scene is especially memorable to me for how disturbing it all was. There are a lot more that I could list here, but I'll save those for a later video. Lee Hardcastle is a British artist that specializes in clay animation. He has worked for several big names as listed on his website. These include Sci-Fi, Burger King, Adult Swim, Disney+, Bethesda, Square Enix, and a few others. The works he did for each aren't listed on the website though. He's also known for making some of the most visually interesting but disturbing clay animations on YouTube. Taking one look at his channel and you'll find over 100 videos using claymation and other animation styles. A lot of these are disturbing and gory, in a way that only an internet web series can be. His most popular video to date is Minion Ways to Die. This video has 41 million views and is 58 seconds of minion murder. A clay minion, or multiple actually, are killed in varying ways. Most of the deaths are references to other properties, including Aliens, Predator, Portal, and even Street Fighter. Each of the deaths is played off as more of a joke than being serious. One of his most popular animations is a Simpsons couch gag that turns into a gory home invasion. The animation is so creative but gruesome. Everyone is killed in this home invasion. It's also visceral and definitely not something you want to accidentally stumble upon. Perhaps his most popular video was a short that was featured in the ABCs of Death, T is for Toilet, a video that, like the last, is too gruesome to show you on here. I don't even know how we got away with uploading it without being considered too dark for YouTube. There are loads of darkly created animations to sift through, most of them giving a Robot Chicken vibe, but much more gory. Obey the Walrus refers to a video that went viral in 2007. The video's original name was Obedece a la Morsa, or Obey the Walrus. This video was posted by a user that went by the handle of Obey the Walrus. The video starts with Andros, the final boss from Star Fox, singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider in Spanish. The song then begins to speed up with the psychedelic screens in the background. Eventually we end up with this video of a woman dancing with an umbrella. The woman slowly starts to walk towards the camera as the song continues to distort. The video ends with an image of a walrus. This video would go on to become a creepypasta, much like other creepy internet videos. This one had captivated all that witnessed it. There was something off about how it was presented and the visuals of it all. Now, there's a lot to this story. First off, there's this woman in the video. Her name is Sandy Crisp, and she was a drag queen and performer that went under the stage name Goddess Bunny. She contracted polio and due to medical mispractice, was left with a severe disability. The rest of the video was pieces of a starting trend at the time, a trend where people would use weird imagery to make creepy videos. This was seen with a plethora of viral videos that appeared on the internet at the time. There were even talks about a cult being created around this video. There's a lot to discuss here and definitely more than I can say without doing a bit more research. If you are interested in hearing more on this topic, Blame It on Jorge made a great video on the subject. He covers everything from the cult to the channel that originally created the video. What happens when a creator is inspired by the likes of Ben Drowned and Marble Hornets? You get one of the best and most interesting unfiction stories to ever happen to the internet. You get Petscop. Petscop is a piece of unfiction that started its story back in March of 2017. It is presented as a Let's Play series by a man named Paul. He found a strange and unfinished PS1 game and takes to the internet to catalog his searches into what the game may hide. If this sounds just like a gaming creepypasta, the inspiration is clear. A lot of gaming creepypastas started this way. Narrator finds a strange, creepy game and documents what they find while playing it. Where a lot of those stories fall short, however, is the opposite of what happens with Petscop. It plays out rather similar to an EXE story, which were popular but also caused a decline in the creepypasta community's popularity. Petscop is the story of Paul, the narrator and Let's Player that is exploring the world of the game of Petscop. The game appears to be a puzzle game about catching pets. Each of the pets has a name and a unique avatar to go with them. Some of the pets are Randus, Wavy, Amber, and Pen. These pets all have some secret meaning or connection to them, just like the rest of the story. Most of the Petscop story isn't straightforward. The best stories usually aren't. It's up to the viewer to decide what is happening and make connections. There's a story that you can glean from the many names and themes made in the story, but a lot of the story is up for interpretation. This means that there are a lot of theories about what is being said by Petscop. That's kind of the fun of the unfiction piece, getting to put together the story yourself as the viewer. Also finding a community and seeing what you all come up with. The way the unfiction is presented is probably the most interesting aspect of it. Having a game that is being explored by the narrator is something that always seems to pull attention. A Let's Play is a great way for viewers to feel like they are playing along, which makes it great for this type of story, even if it's not an ARG and the viewers are just along for the ride. There are currently 24 episodes of the Petscop unfiction, 25 if you count the soundtrack upload. It totals to over 5 hours of footage to enjoy. If you want to take a fun dive into a piece of internet horror that won't be matched for a while, check out Petscop. The earliest form of internet horror, or at least the most prevalent, were jump scare videos. These were often called screamers, as dubbed by the internet, and usually consisted of something that was designed to put you as close to your computer monitor as possible before jump scaring you with an image or something similar. Most of you probably recognize this hill. This hill has a car driving around it, pretty far from where the camera is. As the camera pans to the right, a weird-faced zombie pops out from the right of the screen and screams at you. This same video is placed everywhere online. The first one I ever encountered was sent to me by my brother. It was a maze game. One that he said I couldn't beat his score at. Well, I tried. You get to level 3, and when the maze gets really hard, the Exorcist girl appears on screen with a super loud screaming sound following. Another popular screamer was the rocking chair video. It was a video of a rocking chair that was seemingly rocking on its own. It was usually captioned like it was a real ghost caught on camera. Once the chair stopped rocking, the girl from The Exorcist then crawls towards the camera super fast and jump scares you. There were so many of these videos back in the early days of the internet. They were so prevalent and such an important part of internet history that an entire wiki exists to catalog them all. Go check it out if you have the time.